Good day, year 13. I have boldly chosen to go webcam and screen, although it's only because my computer has a webcam that works now that I'm doing this facility. I might find it far too distracting, but I kind of thought it might be nice to see a familiar teacher face. So who knows, this might or might not be what we're going to see moving forward. So we're going to go straight into links to that prior reading. You were asked last lesson to really look quite closely at a text. We're going to do some recap on the completion of that table. But as a starting point, I would love you just to think about each of these 5 statements. There's 5 from text A and there's 5 from text B. Okay, now all I want you to do is to think, how would you copy and complete each statement based on what you've read and what you've understood in these articles, okay? So number 1, British people are concerned that their accents are. So what was the concern in text A? What are British people worried about? 2, people are worried that accents will stop them getting or their children getting into. 3, it is a lie that Britain has moved away from. 4, a link is made between speaking proper English and feeling. And 5, people want to tone down or lose their accents because they are afraid of. Okay, so in a minute, you're going to pause. Now, you can do it by memory because you've read these articles. They're quite familiar to you now, or if you need to, you can stop and double check in the article itself. So you're going to pause and find the answers to text A. And then you're going to do the same for text B. So I'm just going to talk you through these. Then I'm going to give you a minute to do the work. 5 minutes. I would say give yourself 5-10 minutes, 5 minutes per text, and we'll meet back together in 10 minutes. So text B, the way you speak can. 2, RP was once the prestigious accent, but now it is. 3, when it says regional accents reflect a particular social standing, it implies that people with regional accents are. Now, number 3 is where you're using a bit more inference rather than direct information from the text. You're being asked to infer, to work something out. 4, RP is associated with people like and the professions like. 5, the benefits of changing your accent include being more understandable and which can help. Okay, so you're just going to pause. You're going to look back through the articles or use your notes, and you're going to copy and complete these statements, giving yourself really about 5 minutes per text. Now, guys, I would say, because this is a starter, you don't have to write out the whole statement. If you can print these off, you could fill it in on the sheet if you've got a bit of tech wizardry, or you can just write down number 1, the key word that would fulfill the gap. Okay, so don't feel that you have to copy out every sentence in the next 10 minutes. Okay, see you in a minute. Okay, guys, so that gave you time just to refresh yourself. So let's look at some of these ideas, okay? So we're just going to scroll on. Okay, so British people are concerned that their accents are holding them back, stopping them get a job. Okay, so number 2, people are worried that accents will stop them getting jobs, employment, you might have said, or their children getting into the right school. So these are 2 quite big pressure points for people, isn't it? The future of their children and their own futures. So there is this correlation between the way we speak and creating the right impression for children getting into schools and jobs. Okay, number 3, it is a lie that Britain has moved away from it. Brilliant. Did you get it? Class system. So there's this idea that there's a link between how we speak and our identity is defined by class, whether we're middle class, upper class, working class. Now, you've got to remember it's a lie that Britain, remember this article is written from a Canadian point of view about the situation in our country. So it's almost like an objective perspective. Okay, so as we were saying, it's a lie that Britain's moved away from its class system. A quick reminder, remember text A is written from a Canadian newspaper's point of view, so an outside country looking into the situation in our country, so that objective kind of distance perspective. Brilliant. Number 4, a link is made between speaking proper English and feeling confident. So this kind of idea, now that's the opposite of anxiety, isn't it? There's things we're anxious and concerned about, there's things we're confident for. So this article is saying that there is a link being made between speaking proper English, standard English, and this perception of being confident. And 5, people want to tone down or lose their accents because they're afraid of getting held back in their careers. So for some reason, running through the mindset, the social mindset of people in Britain, according to this article, is the belief that the way we speak will have an impact on our occupations, our careers, and schooling. Okay, and this ties in with this idea of the class system, this perception that people that speak a particular way are middle to upper class, and that has benefits attached. Okay, so let's look at text B. Okay, so the way you speak can change your life. Brilliant. Yep, very optimistic. The way you speak can change your life. 2, RP was once the prestigious accent. Now, I've used the word prestigious here. Within the article, they're talking about the gold standard, but now it is modified RP that's more acceptable. So it's this idea of modified RP. So not as posh, not as strongly pronounced as traditional received pronunciation, but modified RP, this idea of a more neutralized accent that's acceptable. But it's still not saying that accents are acceptable, that all accents are acceptable. It's still promoting one particular way of speaking above and over others. So when it says regional accents reflect a particular social standing, it implies that people with regional accents are, so what's the implication there, this particular social standing? Good, it's the implication that people with regional accents are of a lower social standing and working class. So both these articles are kind of recycling long-held social ideas about the link between the way we speak and our class. Okay, so this perception that regional accents, non-standard accents, non-RP accents are associated with being of a lower social standing and working class. Okay, RP is associated with people like, brilliant, they mentioned Margaret Thatcher by name, and the professions like the law and parliament. In other words, where do those social associations come from? Why in society do we perpetuate the myth, the belief, that RP is better than any other speech? Well, we believe then that it will signify, if I speak RP, it will signify or send out a message to others about my background, my intelligence, my education, and therefore that will have benefits in the workplace. Okay, professions like law and parliament as well, very kind of middle to upper class professions, and this idea of the prestigious professions looking for RP speakers. 5, the benefits of changing your accent include being more understandable. Okay, so this idea of mutual intelligibility, the way we speak about being understood, and better received. In other words, people are going to treat you better if you speak a particular way. Now, if I said people are going to treat you better if you dressed a particular way, or if your skin color was a particular color, or your gender was a particular gender, we would immediately recognize that as discriminatory, as prejudiced, and it would make us rightfully angry or indignant or ready to say, wait a minute, that's wrong. We've recognized when we've looked at this unit on the relationship in the past between society and language that there is this unspoken bias. We continue to perpetuate, to keep going, the idea that it's all right to judge somebody based on the way they speak. It's like a permissible discrimination. Okay, and both these articles kind of like reinforcing those factors that say it's okay to judge somebody based on the way they speak. You'll be better received, which can help you progress at work. In other words, people are judging you based on how you speak. Okay, and the bigger question becomes, is that okay? So guys, that was just to link to our prior reading. Now, the other task that you were set for last lesson was to look at the double-sided table and to populate it with ideas. Now, because this table is designed to be a platform into our writing, if you've done it, it doesn't mean that yours is wrong. Just because I'm going to go through these examples with you today doesn't mean that what you've done is wrong. I just want to make sure that we are in agreement of this sort of information that should be in the table. So I'm not going to spend forever on this. If you want to, you can pause at this point. You can get your copy of the table in front of you, and you can just kind of go through it with me, add any additional notes as we go. Okay, so it looks quite a busy populated table here. So it says over here, graphological features. That's where we can look at anything such as the headlines, the titles. In different types of text, you might find a stand first, which is that opening paragraph, cross-headings and subheadings through a text. Okay, now it says over here as well, we've got text A and a text B, and then we're going to think about things that are similar or different at the level of language use, at the level of meaning, at the potential differences or similarities in the position and the perspectives that the texts are taking. Now, I've just put up here, so it's for our point of reference, underneath text A and B, that text A, quick reminder, it's the online article. It's dealing with the attitudes towards accents, and it's from a Canadian newspaper, the Globe and Mail. Now, a newspaper is a different type of text than Text B. Text B is an article from the tutorpages.com, and it is an advertisement kind of also, part of the tutorpages.com. Its purpose is to advertise tutor services. Okay, and it's writing an article on the skill of clear and expressive speech. In other words, the Tutor Pages is selling us something. It's selling us elocution lessons. And if we're going to buy into the idea that elocution lessons are worth paying for, it's going to have to work to convince us that we need to change the way we speak. Okay, so this is all what we call the context, understanding the context from which these articles or these words or phrases, that we're going to look at come from. Now, similarly, the online article, the Globe and Mail, Canadian newspaper, we could argue it's got a more detached perspective. We're not talking about British people, talking about the situation in Britain. Okay, so we have to remember those when we come to do our paragraph writing. That gives us our context. And when we look through the acronym today for paragraph writing, you will see that it talks about appreciating context. And that means coming back to the GASP information. Okay, so we then had to record in our boxes some words or phrases that we're going to use to form the basis of our analytical paragraphs and to already begin with the labeling. So we've got in text A, accent shy Brits are anxious to talk posh. Now, I've begun to say that this is a simple declarative. Okay, why is it a simple declarative? Well, it begins with the subject, accent shy Brits. It doesn't begin with a verb, so it cannot be an imperative. There is no exclamation, cannot be exclamatory. There is no question mark, cannot be interrogative. So it's a declarative. Why simple? Let's look for our verbs. Accent shy Brits, anxious to talk posh. So we've got the one verb, to talk. So it's a simple declarative. Now, again, you could go through and label every word, or you can just zoom in on one or two. So I've zoomed in here on the adjective, anxious, and I've just made a note to myself that it means that people are concerned and worried. Now, I could have put there, accent shy is also a kind of a compound adjective, okay? I could have talked about the proper noun Brit, so that shortening of British people to Brits. Okay, so we've got accent shy Brits. So we've got the clear identification of the subject, the who. Well, British people who are shy around accents, are anxious, are concerned and worried and want to talk posh. Okay, brilliant. So I've not made notes here about the meaning and the ideas, but as I'm talking to you, I'm just kind of working them through. So really, these boxes we're recording are AO1 details, our labels, so that when we start to write our paragraphs, we're good to go. We can do the two quick elements. There's our choice of quotes. There's our choice of evidence, there's our choice of AO1 labels. So the effort that we put into the paragraph writing comes from the explanation and the linking. Okay, so then we look at text B. The way we speak can change our life. Now this also, we've got the simple declarative, the way we speak can change our life. Okay, we've got the declarative, it begins with the subject. Now we've got the use of the modal can, which suggests potential, it suggests option. It's not saying the way we speak does change our life. So there's a little bit of hedging going on. And we've got the verb change. Okay, so we could talk about that this headline, this title is promoting a positive idea around changing the way we speak. It's creating a positive connection between the adaptation of the way we speak to making our lives better. Whereas the accent shy Brits one really sets up this tension that people are changing the way they speak. They want to talk posh because they're worried about something. So that's a very different reason for change, isn't it? Am I changing because it's going to make my life better, or am I changing because I'm afraid of something? Yeah, so already we can begin to have these ideas about perspective. Now over here it says this similar or different. Okay, so both titles are simple declaratives. However, text A is a third person perspective. Okay, it's talking about the Brits in the third person, whereas text B does use some first person pronouns. It does use we. Okay, now we is the first person plural pronoun, so it suggests a different perspective. Okay, but both are introducing the topic of adapting speech in order to change your life. One, however, is presenting it positively. One is attaching it to fear and anxiety. So text A attaches change to fear and anxiety. We're going to change because we're afraid of something. Text B says we're going to change because we're going to make our lives better. So both are addressing the same topic, beginning to think about the same tension. Why are we changing the way we speak? Is it a good change or a bad change? And that's our titles, okay? Now, then it says opening. Now, when we talk about the opening, you could look at the opening word, the opening sentence, the opening paragraph, depending on your confidence at the level of labeling. So actually, both of these are single sentences. So text A, tough economic times have prompted many Britons to seek out some unusual help in order to get ahead. Elocution lessons. Text B, received pronunciation, RP, was once the gold standard in speech, and now we find it is much more acceptable to have a modified RP accent, which reflects the dynamic language we enjoy. Okay, so in both of these then, we're looking at declaratives again. Okay, so sentence functions, C grade declaratives. They both begin with the subjects, received pronunciation, tough economic times. However, really, we get higher grades if we can talk about whether it's simple, complex, compound. So tough economic times have prompted, so there's our first verb phrase, okay, have prompted many Britons to seek out, there's a second, some unusual help in order to get ahead. So we're looking at three connected verb phrases, okay, none of which are joined using and, but, or, so none of them are being linked using coordinating conjunctions, and none of them are being linked using punctuation. So this is a complex sentence, a complex declarative. Okay, brilliant. Let's look at received pronunciation. Received pronunciation was once the gold standard in speech, and now we find it is much more acceptable to have a modified accent, RP accent, which reflects the dynamic language we enjoy. Now, quick note about complex and compound sentences. If we just zoomed in on the connective and, we could make a very quick but wrong assumption that we were looking at a compound sentence. Because we would say to ourselves, received pronunciation was once the gold standard in speech. So that's a main clause. And, that's a coordinating conjunction. And now we find it's much more it must be a compound. Now, complex or subordinating conjunctions always trump compounds. So look down. If we follow the idea through, then we get to this little comma. And then here comes a subordinating conjunction, which. Now that which immediately trumps the and turns this into a complex compound sentence. Okay, so actually that's another similarity. Both our writers begin with complex declaratives. Let's see what else is happening. Tough economic times have prompted many Britons to seek out some unusual help. So you've got this lovely verb phrase, prompted. Now, prompt means to gently prod somebody in a particular direction. So tough economic times, that noun phrase, is a gentle prod towards people wanting to change the way they speak. Okay, so we've got that also the adjective tough means difficult. We've got the other adjective unusual. Now, the final noun phrase, elocution lesson, we've got this lovely placement at the end of the sentence. We've got the colon, kind of announcing or revealing. This is the unusual help. So you get this revelation, elocution lessons are the unusual help. Okay, so there's a lovely placement there with the revelation after the colon, elocution lessons. So the revelation, the elocution lessons are the unusual help that people are turning to in order to get ahead. So get ahead there, that verb phrase is being used as a synonym for success and progress and making, and getting on in society. Now, we've got text B, we've got received pronunciation. So there's the noun phrase, was once the gold standard in speech. So we get this lovely use of the metaphor gold standard. Now, gold standard is like the highest standard. Gold has connotations of the best. So RP was once held as the highest standard, the best standard in speech. And now we find, so we've got this we again, the first person plural pronoun, this continuation of the first person perspective. It is much more acceptable to have a modified RP accent, which reflects the dynamic language we enjoy. So we've got the comparative adjective, much more acceptable. So in other words, the traditional RP has been replaced by something is more popular, is more acceptable, and that's this, right, it's modified RP. So this new kind of noun phrase, modified RP, which reflects the dynamic language we enjoy. So you've got this interesting use of the noun phrase now, dynamic language. Now, what we haven't got here, though, is a positive presentation, a positive representation of regional accents or non-standard accents. This is still very much saying that what is being promoted is a form of RP. It's not the original RP. It's a modified RP accent. And modified means slightly changed, but it's still this idea that there is a right way to speak. And the right way to speak is still a form of RP. It's not accepting that accents, all accents in their diversity, have equal standing. Now, the dynamic language we enjoy. Now, we recognize, because of context, that this is from the tutor pages, this is advertising elocution. So they are pitching their ideas very carefully. They're not overtly, in an obvious way, coming out and saying accents are bad. This is wrong. They are choosing to present their ideas, their perspectives in a very kind of guarded, safe way. So they're not taking any risk. They're not saying this is wrong and this is right. They use some what we would call euphemistic language. So dynamic language is here being used here, and the verb enjoy as well, to suggest that there are certain types of language that we enjoy, that we aesthetically find pleasing, and others we don't. So both of these then are using complex declaratives, using adjectives, noun phrases. Both use elocution and modified RP to introduce, again, to reinforce that both of these articles are addressing the topic of changing how you speak. Now, where the tension begins to arise. Now, tension means the conflict. What's the issue here? Is the reasons why people are changing the way they speak. Okay? Now, text A is presenting one of the first reasons. Why do people change the way they speak? Okay, in the title, it's because they're afraid of something. And now it's saying that they're changing the way they speak in order to get ahead. So for promotion, for career benefits, they are changing the way they speak. In brackets, because they're afraid of tough economic times, they're afraid of losing jobs, they're afraid of not being employed. Now in text B, it says that people are changing the way they speak because it's reflecting a dynamic language. So again, both acknowledge there is a change in the way people speak. People are changing their accents. The reasons why, though, are being presented is different. Text A, it's fear-driven, it's a desire to get ahead. Text B, at this stage, is suggesting it's about enjoyment and dynamic. So it's presenting changes natural and something we can enjoy. Now, when you look at this first stage of the table, we jump right down to the closing section. Okay, and this first part of the table that you did represents the content that you really need for a strong, kind of secure C grade. So if you turned each of these rows, so the graphological feature, the opening and the closing, into analytical paragraphs and presented it as an essay, you would be potentially achieving a C grade. Now, you could do all of these, get all your labeling wrong, have no real understanding what you've read, and then it wouldn't be a C grade. So I can't lie and say it's absolutely going to get you a C. But when we start to build these into analytical paragraphs, there is enough content here to secure the C. Okay, so we skip right to the closing. Now that means the very last sentence or the very last paragraph. Okay, so we skip right to the end of text A, and it says, and many of those asking for help said they wanted to modify or lose their accents because they feared being ridiculed or held back in their careers, the company found. Now, we've got the use of a direct quote here from another source, and many of those asking for help said. So actually, really, we need to look at that source in a minute and ground it and say, well, what's the source, where it's come from? But we do see some interesting verb choices, modify and lose, wanted. So people are making internal choices to change their accents, losing them completely or modifying, changing them. And then it uses that subordinate and connective because, which makes this a complex sentence, to give a reason. Now look at their verb choices, feared and ridiculed. People are changing the way they speak because they're afraid of being ridiculed. They're afraid of being mocked or scoffed at. They're afraid of being held back in their careers. So again, we've got this lovely cyclical. Now, I should have put that in that box. I would make a note of that because this is a lovely moment of cohesion, because we've got a cyclical link from the end to the beginning. Because what hasn't changed across all of this article is that the reasons for changing the way people are speaking in Britain is being driven by fear, driven by anxiety. People are worried about losing jobs, about not getting promoted because of the way they speak. Okay, now that is a cyclical feature. Now, text B, on the other hand, ends in quite a very different way. So far, text A and B have been quite similar, but the language of the ending is completely different. Let's look at text B. Allow the way you speak to give you the control to change your life! Exclamation mark. I kind of sound like I should be on like a shopping channel. We've got an exclamatory imperative. We've got an exclamatory because it ends with an exclamation, but because it begins with the verb allow, it is actually imperative. So this is very much like a hybrid sentence here. They're combining the exclamatory and the imperative. It's like a double whammy. They want to like buy one, get one free. They want to combine two impacts in one sentence. So the exclamatory is that moment of heightened emphatic stress. The imperative is that moment of taking control. Allow the way you speak to give you control to change your life. And actually, although it is a complex sentence, allow the way you speak to give you the control to change your life. It's very short. It's very emphatic, very punchy. It's very advertising. This is the use of what we call the typical rhetorical features associated with advertising. And that reminds us of where we started, that the tutorpages.com is an article that actually has a purpose to sell tutor services. So there is a hidden purpose, which isn't just to inform and give us information about accents, but it is designed to make us want to go and sign up for elocution lessons. So it kind of hits us with that in the final sentence where they are being very persuasive. Very deliberate use of rhetorical features. So we've got the second person pronouns now. We've moved away from the we to the you. Allow the way you speak to give you the control to change your life. Now, guys, the you're there is not a second person pronoun. It's a possessive determiner. But it's definitely this kind of hyperbolic, exaggerated, punchy kind of language of advertising. Allow the way you speak to give you the control to change your life. Very different in tone to text A. Okay, so both texts end by promoting language change and adaptation is desirable. Both are saying change is happening. However, text B is selling the process of change through elocution lessons, whereas text B reminds us that these changes are occurring because of fear and anxiety. Okay, now, so just over here, a last little bit, just some summary statements. So with these three summary statements, if you've completed your table already, I've just talked through. Hopefully you could tick off where you made similar points or added any in. But I just want you to just pause now and to complete these statements, okay? So these are what we call summary statements. Now, the reason I want you to pause here is because they link into the reverse part of the table. How do we go from a C grade to a B to an A? Okay, so accents create. Now we're just literally summarizing all the ideas from this table. Okay, accents create tension between adopting an accent to get ahead or keeping your own accent for number 2, and 3, blank causes people to lose accents. Text B, changing the way you speak makes your life blank. The type of speech being promoted is 3, you can control your life and how it is going by. So I just want you to pause. Complete those sentences, those summary statements, and we'll have a look at them together. Okay, so accents create anxiety, fear. Tension between adopting an accent to get ahead or keeping your own accent is all through text A. What causes people to really lose their accent? Fear. Brilliant. So we've got fear causes people to lose their accents. Accents create anxiety. Now for text B, changing the way you speak makes your life, what do you think? Better. They are promoting it as being better, aren't they? The type of speech being promoted is modified RP, neutral accents. You can control, but for number 2, definitely not a regional accent, definitely not a marked accent. 3, you can control your life and how it's going by changing your accent. Now, the reason I want to draw attention to those summaries is when you try to do the reverse of the table, you might or might not have remembered that when we talk about the presentation of views, we want to find 3 moments in text A that really back up what we've already seen. And we wanted to find 3 moments in text B to back up what we've already seen. So really, we want to find from text A any more evidence that accents create anxiety, that there is tension between adopting an accent to get ahead, that fear causes people to lose their accent. And in conclusion, text A is more objective, it's third person reporting. For text B, we wanted to find evidence that changing the way you speak makes your life better, that the type of speech being promoted is modified RP, that you can control your life and how it's going. Now, because of what we're doing today, and because you're year 13, I've not done this side of table in the same way that I did the other. However, when we start building up our paragraphs today, okay, you will use this table. And if you need to, we can come back to this together. But this is what you need to potentially build up to a full mark essay. Now, presentations of views, I'm not saying you have to do 3 from each text. You might end up doing 2 from text A and 1 from text B. And if you write about it in depth and with understanding, you can achieve your B and your A without having to do 3 from A, 3 from B. The reason we say think about 3 ideas from A, 3 ideas from B is it gives you choice. Okay, you might find, well, actually, I can find loads of evidence from text A around accents creating anxiety. I can find lots of words or phrases. In text B, I can find lots of evidence of the ways that changing the way you speak makes your life better. So it's about choice. Okay, now, guys, I'm just going to have to pause and upload this video and do the second video, because it's a 2-hour lesson, isn't it, as a separate upload. So don't go anywhere. Don't think because we finished this video, it's done. We've got one more to go today. I'll see you in the other video.